Hello and welcome to For Book's Sake. I'm Heather Roberts.
And I am Veronica Adams, and we are 1852 Media.
We are going to be talking today about some bad publishing friends.
Oh
And I guess,
my.
yeah. So there has been an update. This goes back to a story that happened, 2021, something like that.
Yeah.
Actually, it could have been before that. Let me see.
Even earlier than that, I think.
I think
I
it might
think
have
this
been
started to make
2018.
headlines during the pandemic at some point, but
Yeah.
it predates lockdown and all of that
Okay, I'm
stuff.
sorry. It was first published, I believe, in like 2016, 2015,
Yeah,
something like
yeah, yeah,
that.
yeah.
But
7, 8 years into this now.
yes, it's been a minute. The lawsuit has been a couple years old. That's what I was thinking
Mhm.
of.
Yeah.
So this
As
is
lawsuits usually go.
yeah. What we're talking about is what is it called? Bad Art Friend. That is the name of the New York Times Magazine feature article that was written about this particular dispute between these two writers who met in a sort of writing workshop in, I believe, in Boston or somewhere in Massachusetts. So the story goes. let's try to talk about the
Set the
basic
scene for
facts.
us,
Let me
Heather.
set the scene. Okay, so there's two women here, Larson and Dorland.
Yes.
Okay, Dorland had a kidney. Sorry,
She donated a
she
kidney to someone,
donated a
right?
kidney. Thank you. That's what I'm trying
Yes,
to say.
she's Larson is a kid. No, Dorland is a kid.
Dorland,
Thank you. Oh
Dorland.
my gosh, how are
I
we
know
going to
that's
get
what I
through
was
this?
trying to say. How are we going to get through this?
Dorland is a kidney donor.
Yes, Dorland is a kidney donor.
Okay.
And as part of that kidney donation process,
Yes.
she had created a private Facebook group. And which Larson was a member. She didn't
Yes.
like post or anything like that. She was a lurker. We're all
Yes.
lurkers. Such is life.
I am such a group lurker.
I
You
am
see me in
such a
your group, I
lurker.
am totally paying attention to what you're doing, even if I'm not engaging. Yes.
I'm a lurker.
Me too.
So Dorland, as part of her kidney donation process, she was part of like a chain of kidney donors. And she wrote this letter and put it in this private Facebook group. And this letter was basically to the last person in the chain of the kidney donors. Because I guess when one person donates a kidney, then oftentimes like the wife or a spouse or whatever of the person will also donate a kidney. And then it's called this chain of,
So,
donors.
like people in like you donate a kidney and the recipient someone related to them is inspired by your generosity in helping to save
Yes,
this person's life, so they then take it upon themselves to also make a donation in some way, and
correct.
these people are all interconnected in their saving each other's lives and donating organs.
Correct.
Got it. Got
Yes.
it. That's a
So,
little inspiring but also maybe odd.
correct. So, Dorland, the kidney donor herself,
Yes.
writes this letter, like seemingly addressed to the last person in this kidney donor recipient, who would be the
Okay. Okay.
recipient of the last person in the chain who maybe doesn't have any other family or friends who are going to continue on the chain of donation.
Got it. Got it.
It's not like super important, but it's not. I just wanted to be clear that it's not addressed to like a specific person.
Right.
Okay, it's addressed to
It's
this.
this idea of someone who receives a donation but has no one in their lives who might continue the generosity.
Right.
Yeah.
So she writes this letter, and Larson sees it, and Larson is
Because she's
inspired
lurking.
because she's lurking, and Larson is inspired to write this short story, which she entitles "The Kindest," which they don't talk about this in the opinion that I read. They don't like blatantly mention this particular point, But I found it interesting that I guess a key portion of the letter that Dorlin wrote ended with kindly. And it was like kindly, like her name or whatever, like instead of sincerely or whatever. And then she names her short story The Kindest. And I thought that was an interesting thing. Okay. So in The Kindness, there's a kidney recipient that's not really happy to receive a letter from her living donor. And
Could be awkward.
yeah. And she eventually ends up in the story. She ends up meeting the living donor, and the living donor is sort of like white saviory and is very like, it just like it's sort of a critique upon the wrong reasons why somebody would give a kidney, if you
Karen
will.
comes to mind. The
Yeah.
archetype of the Karen, if you will.
Somebody
A
who's
person in a
doing
space
it.
a person in a space they don't belong in. A person taking up
Yeah.
space in a way they don't
And
deserve to.
and like this person in the story does this good thing, but not necessarily for the right reasons.
Yeah.
And so that's the
Performative
vulnerability.
altruism and all of that.
Yes. So The Kindness then is this short story that Larson wrote. In the story, she literally takes, in the first iterations of the story, I should say, she literally takes the letter that Dorlin wrote and uses it in her story. Like basically
Verbatim.
verbatim. Like basically verbatim.
Strike number 1, Lurking
Yeah.
Larson.
I think in the original, like they do in the order, the summary judgment,
Yeah.
order opinion, rather.
Oh God, you broke out court documents for
Oh,
this.
I read the whole summary judgment opinion.
Ladies and gentlemen, Heather Roberts, willing to dive into the court record when others are not.
That's right. They actually count out the amount of words that were similar versus different in the first iteration of the story.
That's relevant in a legal dispute.
It absolutely is. And if I could go down to that portion, because I think this is relevant to our discussion for
Absolutely.
the authors who are listening to this, like what is considered copyright? Like what does
Right.
the
At
court
what point
look
is
at?
is art imitating life, and at what point is art imitating life theft of someone else's story or intellectual property?
Right.
Yeah.
So complaint. Let's hold on. We got to get down to the copyright things. Okay, so there's
Homegirl is looking at the docket right now. I can just tell
yes,
the
I
concentration
am.
on her face.
So there was the 2016 Brilliance audio letter, right? Is what
Okay.
they're calling the first iteration of this story.
Got
right?
it.
In it, the Dorlin letter is approximately 81 words long. Of those 381 words, the 2016 letter copies verbatim approximately 100 and closely paraphrases approximately 50 more. So it's like the 2016 letter also follows an identical structure to the Dorlin letter, a paragraph introducing the donor, including information on race, age, and gender, a paragraph explaining how the donor discovered the need for kidney donation, a paragraph explaining the donor's traumatic childhood, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It like it might not have those exact words that was used in the original letter, but
structure is the same though.
Structure is the same, and approximately half of the words are the same.
Are either identical or very closely matching.
Yes. So
yikes on bikes.
Yikes on bikes. So Dorlin then she finds out that Larson is going to be publishing this story. This is like pre-publication. And she sends Larson an email and is like, "Hey, I'd love to read it." I guess she had heard through the grapevine that it was like, inspired by her, right?
Well,
evidently
you're the kind of donor who's writing a letter to someone else in your donor chain. I suspect you're also the kind of person who would be flattered at first to find out that someone is inspired in writing a story related to you.
Sure.
This seems a little egotistical to me.
She wanted to read it. She was like, hey, can you shoot it over to me when you're done. And Larson's like, yeah, I will. It's not quite done yet. And I don't want to send it out like unfinished, blah, blah, blah. And so Dorland's like, okay. And I guess just doesn't really, think about it from then on. Okay. Also noted that in the first iteration of the story that Larson wrote, the main character's name was Dawn, and Dorland's first name is also Dawn. So there's that. She later changed the first name of the character to be Rose, the kidney donor. Excuse me. But yeah, the first version was the same first name as Dorland. So a little creepy there. So a few days after that email exchange where she said she'd be happy to send it over once it's finished.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Larson then it was actually already, to my understanding, it was already done. So she lied to her. So because it says in the complaint or in the opinion, it says a few days after that email exchange and a day after Audible published the first version of the audio recording. So if Audible is publishing the first version of the audio recording,
it's been done for a minute.
It's been done.
It's been done, and someone has had time to actually record the audio and do the performance and finalize those files and submit them to ACX so that Audible is publishing them.
Larson then contacts this company called Plimpton that she used to get to narrate, to do the narration.
Yes.
And requested that the story be re-recorded because the letter in the kindest, quote unquote, includes a couple sentences that I'd excerpt from a real life letter. And for ethical reasons, I'm uncomfortable keeping those lines in. So she then sent the company a revised iteration of the kindest, including a new letter in which much less of Dorland's original letter appears, although the letter structure and organization is pretty much the same. Also,
the cat's out of the bag at this point because the first edition contains the roughly 50% identical letter.
Yeah.
And the character's name is Dawn.
No, that wasn't that was pre-publication.
Okay. So the revision from Dawn to Rose is pre-publication.
Yeah, the people in her writing group were like, that's too close.
Okay. Too on the nose there.
Yeah.
But the letter is the almost 50% identical letter in the first version.
Yeah. Okay. So, and then the second version, the re-recorded version of the story, was published as an audiobook on Audible in October 2016. However, the original audiobook version, including the original letter, remain publicly available for purchase online. Okay. So in the summer of 2017, Larson then submitted The Kindness, including the edited version of the letter. So we're talking iteration 2 to American Short Fiction, and they accepted it for print publication. And they included it in a print-bound collection of short stories that summer. And then a year later, in May 2018, ASF, American Short Fiction, ASF, released an online version of The Kindness. And that is where I believe Dorland finally read it. So in 2018, when it was released online.
So it's been out in an audio version and included in a collection. And she doesn't see it for almost 2 years after it's originally been published.
Correct. So then in May of 2018, I bet. May of 2018, the Boston Book Festival informed Larson that The Kindness had won this One City, One Story competition. Okay.
Homegirl is winning awards with this woman's story.
Winning awards. Okay.
No.
Yes. And so then Larson then executes an agreement allowing the Boston Book Festival to use the story in their related events for the One City, One Story competition and things like that. Basically, it means that story will now be distributing thousands of copies around the greater Boston area. Okay. It did not require any payment to Larson for use of the story or any compensation. Okay,
Well, no,
so
but how many people read it and then went and bought Larson's other stuff?
that is right. That is a question that is not really addressed here, right? So then in early June 2018, Dorland reads the online version and she recognizes similarities.
Of course
And
she does.
my my paraphrasing is she hits the motherfucking roof. I mean, I don't know how else to describe what Dorland does other than she loses her mind. In my opinion, rightfully so.
Yeah,
I mean, she's mad.
yeah.
She contacts every single person that she possibly can think of. She contacts the co-editor of ASF,
Mhm.
talking about plagiarism and the kindness.
Yes.
She contacts, the Boston Book Festival.
She's hot.
She's
She's
hot.
justifiably hot. She wants everyone to know that she's been done wrong and that she's actually a victim here, and that this story everyone has loved and that has been well received is actually a
Yes.
ripoff of her own personal story.
She's contacting people on Twitter with direct messages, emails to people. Like,
Side
she's
note, when something like this happens to you, this may not be the best way to handle it. Like,
right. So, like, apparently, Larson lists approximately 30 individuals and entities contacted by Dorland. Um, Dorland doesn't deny the contacts, but notes that some of the individuals are
oh,
leaders or members of the named organization. So, like,
right,
like ACF, she would like
right.
email like 15 people. I'm just making that number up, but like
Yeah, yeah,
a
yeah.
bunch of people that are part of that organization. So it's not like she's just randomly messaging people, but
Sure, sure.
yeah.
She hit Jeff Bezos for being the
I mean,
CEO of Amazon and owner of Audible.
right. Perhaps. So then in June, she's still like reeling, right? She's gone on
Yes,
her email campaign.
right.
She emails the Breadloaf Writers Conference, which is a writing program that Larson had won a fellowship in 2017.
Oh, okay.
She inquires whether a 2017 tuition fellow, does not specifically name Larson, had applied using the kindness as part of her portfolio. portfolio. So she doesn't like specific. She's just talking about the work. She's just, okay. And then states that the kindness included a letter that had plagiarized Dorland's work and etc. So then, still in June 2018, Dorland registers the copyright for her Facebook letter. So this is where we're at. So then, after people are receiving these emails, right, from Dorland, and the organizations are like, hey, Larson, what's going on? Right?
Question here.
Question.
This is unusual. These peculiar things continue to happen. What's up with that?
Yeah, we're getting some info here. This looks similar. What's going on? I guess the one of the legal teams actually they sent an email to Larson and they asked her to consider the possibility of making changes to the story based on what they hear from its lawyer about what constitutes the threshold for
Let
plagiarism.
me guess. She rejected the call to consider making changes to the story.
No, she didn't actually. Okay, so
Oh,
she agreed to rewrite. So on June 13, 2018,
okay.
she altered the structure of the letter in the kindness and removed almost all the language that appeared in the Dorland letter. So we're on iteration 3 of the letter.
Okay.
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 But so then like the ASF takes down the kindness and, they start like things are starting to, her book's starting to get short story is starting to get taken down places. They note in here that Larson still received the full $300 due to her under the ASF contract. We are not talking about money here, people. Like, just to be clear, I can't really see where Larson gained much, if any, monetary financial like compensation for this
Directly
story.
from her work in this
Directly
particular
from the
case, but
kindest.
what what income did she generate by virtue of the publicity of the kindness or the kindest? And
Yeah.
also maybe from the controversy itself, because like that happens too.
Yeah.
All press is good press.
I guess. I guess. So Larson made the revisions. We are in iteration 3 of this letter,
Yes.
okay, in the story.
Mhm.
And then Dorland's, made aware by the Boston Book Festival that, she's made changes, et cetera, et
Right.
cetera. And Dorland writes to express her dismay that they're moving forward with printing the revised version, stating that I wouldn't have been at all surprised if Boston Book Festival had found it repugnant to grant a writer who committed plagiarism such a wonderful platform, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay.
Basically, like, she's still mad that they're giving her a platform at all.
Well, she's got a point.
Yeah,
This
she's
woman did plagiarize her.
admits to it, in fact. I
Uh-huh.
mean, admits that she
And
did.
has now
And
twice struggled to reduce the amount of plagiarism she's committed. Not to eliminate it in its entirety, but to just simply reduce the amount of plagiarism that she's engaged in.
correct. So, and Dorland she's also upset because the kindest contained factual inaccuracies with respect to the process of kidney donations. And in the tone in which it puts out, it basically would discourage someone from organ donation.
Okay.
And so Dorland, I think, also has a point in which she's upset that her original letter that was meant to like be this, beautiful, kind, thank you letter, sort of like, beautiful, kind moment between
Mm-hmm.
her and a kidney recipient has been now taken and repurposed into a book that is essentially going to discourage organ donation at all.
Well, my understanding is, and you have done way more research on this story than I have, so please correct me if I'm out of line with this.
I'll
But
see.
my understanding is that Larson's story is a satirization of Dorland entering this space as a donor and
Right. Yes.
expecting a certain amount of gratitude and warm embrace from the recipient community.
Right.
It has like privileged white savior vibes to it almost.
Yeah. Which is
It's a little
really
bit icky.
that is really what the story is about. So, I mean, she was inspired. I'll say that. She was inspired.
Right. Right.
So, and
And she's
well,
making more of a point about that particular element of it rather than just the idea of
also,
donating to save lives.
I mean, let's think about this. It's a Facebook post. But she made a Facebook post that was then repurposed and
Yeah.
what have you, changed multiple times
Right.
to get it away from what the original exact
Mm-hmm.
wording was to, satisfy her. And she is, emailing everybody under the sun. And
Right.
then she, in mid June, reaches out to a reporter at the Boston Globe to talk about this.
All right.
So, I mean, this is next level petty. Okay, guys?
Yeah.
Like, this is the fact, we can get into that later. But like, this is a Facebook post and a short story that is not commercially like huge. We're not talking about any
Yeah.
sort of commercial financial monetary gain here.
Yeah.
I just need to make that clear. So then Dorland has a lawyer and as it starts writing cease and desist letters to like
As you
the boss,
do.
as you do, to the Boston Book Festival, and threatening legal action. She writes to the head of Larson's then employer, files a complaint of professional misconduct
Mm-hmm.
against
Right.
Larson
Right.
because she worked at at the original place where they met. That sort of it's called, what is it called? Grub Street in Boston. It's like a writing workshop place where you go to like meet other writers and
It's a creative space for writers.
correct, yeah.
Okay.
And Larson worked there.
Okay. Well,
so she
behaving unethically as a writer and working in a creative space for writers could be a professional conflict of interest in a big way.
Sure. She complained that Larson had physically ghosted Dorland at a conference and called for Larson to be suspended with her without pay. So then there's, the Boston Book Festival attorney sent her attorney a copy of the revised version, the third version of The Kindest.
Right.
And the Dorland's attorneys responded that she was dissatisfied with the revisions.
What a shock.
Shocking. So then Larson now has counsel. Okay. Dorland has counsel. We both lawyered up.
Which is just proof that there is a lawyer out there who will take every single case.
Absolutely.
Every pot has a lid, every case has a lawyer.
And now Dorland is saying that she wants acknowledgement of her contribution to the story with her name cited and information about how to donate a kidney and $5,000.
Only $5,000?
Which Larson hasn't made any. She's made $300 by my count.
Only $5,000?
Yeah.
Like, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
So then they find out that Dorland had contacted the Boston Globe, right? Yeah. And so they called, Larson's attorney calls Dorland's attorney and is like, there's no point in discussing settlement if there's going to be a negative article in the Boston Globe. Like, we're not settling with you.
Right.
Valid. Okay, that is valid. And they reply, like, if we get everything we'll want, we'll give our full effort to kill the story. Yeah, okay.
But this is a small claim in most jurisdictions. You can't even get into regular court with this amount of money. Like,
right.
What?
Yeah. And so in July of 2018, the Boston Globe ran the story. Okay. And the article contains quotes from the Dorland letter, the 2017 version, and the 2016 version. And they're both quoted in the article, but nobody calls Larson a plagiarist in that particular article.
Curious.
Yeah. In August of 2018, Boston Book Festival prints 30,000 copies of the third revised version of The Kindest. Okay.
The overhauled letter version.
The final version. Yeah. There's a suggestion. So then they inform Larson that the One City, One Story thing, it's being canceled as a result of the ongoing dispute with Dorland. And they actually threaten and say possibly that they might be coming after Larson for the costs of printing The Kindest, which is like approximately $10,000. But eventually Larson wasn't actually required to compensate them for their costs, but there was a moment there where she thought maybe she was going to have to.
She would be responsible for that.
She would be responsible for that. And so yeah, this is going on. So after discovery had commenced in this action. So I find it very interesting to note that Larson then sues Dorland. So Larson, who wrote the story, she initiated this action that we're talking about January 30th, 2019. Okay. She brings claims against Dorland for intentional interference.
Of course it's a tort.
Of course. Intentional interference with Larson's advantageous business relationship with ASF, American, writing place.
Just because it didn't make money doesn't mean it didn't make her money.
Intentional interference with Larson's advantageous business relationship with Boston Book Festival.
Yeah.
Defamation, and sought a declaratory judgment of non-infringement. Okay. So after discovery had commenced in this action, so the lawsuit's filed,
right.
Actually,
parties are exchanging information or fighting over why they shouldn't have to exchange information.
Yes.
Yeah.
Dorland then contacts a writer at the New York Times to further publicize this dispute with Larson.
Why not? I mean, why not?
Why not? So the New York Times, this is when it became viral. This is when it went viral and everybody started talking about it. Granted, we were still in the Panorama. So the article was published October 10th, 2021. People were working from home for the most part still. There's still a lot of people who are, but this was
Some of us worked from home before it was cool.
Exactly. But this was before the mandates of returning to the office were even being thought of in the little glimmer. Okay. The long form article was titled, "Who is the Bad Art Friend?" And that is where the whole name comes from. Okay. Who is the Bad Art Friend? They include Larson's early texts that had come out in Discovery. Apparently, she was friends with some semi-famous or famous writers and had some texts between them that were allegedly disparaging to Dorland. All sorts of stuff.
Allegedly.
Well, you know what I'm... We are on the interwebs. So, and these people are apparently litigious. So over nothing.
This is a catch-all disclaimer. Listen, you can probably look up the texts in the docket and see them and read them for yourself and decide whether or not you think allegedly applies.
Absolutely.
But Heather's saying allegedly.
I'm saying allegedly.
Right,
I have not read the texts in depth, so that's why I'm saying allegedly, because
I'll stop busting your stones.
Okay. So Larson, she, by the way, kept her job at Grub Street for 3 years.
Whoa, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
She was terminated after the New York Times story was published.
Okay. In the era of cancel culture, or actions have consequences.
Yeah. Which one do we go down?
You can frame that one of two ways.
Wow, yeah.
She kept her job.
Well, until this came out, and Grub Street
until the New York Times Magazine ran its story.
Yes. Grub Street attributing their change in organization's employment decisions to, quote unquote, certain documents relating to this lawsuit that recently came to light. I believe it's because of the texts.
Okay.
I have not. They were published in the New York Times story. It's behind a paywall, friends. Okay, so that's why I didn't read it. I could go back into the docket and pull it up, but pull up because
journalism.
It's in there.
A public service in this country.
I know, but anyway, so that's why I don't know what the texts say. But I have heard people espouse upon the texts, and apparently they were not putting people in the best light. And so I can understand if you're in like a writer's space, right? And you're supposed to be like this supportive writing environment, as Grub Street is supposed to be. If you have an employee who is not doing that,
being inclusive or welcoming of all people who might want to engage with Grub Street.
Sure.
Yeah.
So then Dorland has counterclaims. So, like I said, Larson.
Naturally.
Yeah. She counterclaims for copyright infringement, as one does.
Duh.
Declaratory relief and injunctive relief under copyright law.
Yes.
So now what I am reading and what has come before the court is dual motions for summary judgment. So, Dorland's pending motion for summary judgment. Okay.
I'm sorry. Banjos are playing in my head right now.
Yeah, I know. Dorland has a pending motion for summary judgment, and she requests entry of judgment on her remaining counts against Larson, as well as Larson's remaining counts against Dorland. Okay. And then Larson has a pending cross motion for partial summary judgment, requesting entry. Yeah. I will spare you the legal mental maneuvering that requires, okay, because it's a lot of...
I bet it's impressive though.
It's summary judgment, it can be very confusing. Suffice it to say that summary judgment can be issued. Summary judgment is a final judgment in the case
where the judge makes a ruling before a jury could ever hear the case at trial.
Correct. And so, yeah. And it's when the facts are not in dispute. When there is enough facts that are not in dispute that the outcome could be determined. I guess that's the best way to say it, based upon the law. So then they go through a whole massive discussion about this. And they essentially come to the conclusion that the third letter, which is the only real letter that's at issue here. Okay. So yeah, she did have that 2016 and 2017 letter, right? But that's not really what we're talking about here
No,
in
it's not
this.
the most widely published version of the letter.
It's not the most, yeah, it's not the most
Yeah,
widely
just
published
even she
version.
found the first one.
Yeah. And it's also been changed, right? It's been changed multiple
Yeah,
times.
substantially.
Yeah. And so that letter doesn't infringe upon the Dorland letter. They find that the 2018 letter is not substantially similar to the Dorland
Why
letter.
wouldn't they? Yeah, if it's been
And
completely overhauled.
right. That the first letter is in fact, based on the documents before the court, the 2016 letter took material of substance and value from the Dortland letter in such a quantity and in such a manner that points of similarity outweigh the points of dissimilarity. So yes, that one would indeed.
Even the court saying alleged plagiarism, not actual plagiarism.
Well, okay, so here's the thing. Larson maintains that the 2016 letter was published by accident and without her consent. She appears to
Of
suggest.
course she does.
Yeah. She appears to suggest, but never explicitly argues, that the 2016 letter cannot be subject to a copyright infringement claim. She offers no evidence to support her assertion that the release of the story on August 3rd, 2016 occurred without her consent, or to suggest that she had not given Plimpton, the people that published it, the right to publish the 2016 version of the story. As such, this court will consider Dorland's copyright infringement claim against the Brilliance version of The Kindest, which is the third version.
Yeah.
So that's why we're talking about that. It's just wild. So wild. Okay.
Man.
So then Larson contends that even if any of the Larson letters are found to be substantially similar to the Dorland letter, that she had fair use to use them. And there's a whole fair use doctrine.
Oh, she did not.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. She went.
Of course she did. Her lawyers would absolutely do this, but like the nerve.
The nerve. Because, okay, so the fair use doctrine is a mixed question of law and fact, okay?
Yes, it is.
It's very case by case. And the court, so the Copyright Act directs the court to determine whether use of the work for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, research is non-infringing fair use by considering a couple of factors. One is the purpose and character of the use, including whether the use is commercial in nature or for nonprofit educational purposes.
Right.
Two is
distinguished from parody and things like that, where you
correct.
Have, like, when you have first thing that comes to mind with parody is recording artists, right? Like Weird Al.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. And music, but yeah, exactly. So totally different analysis for
something like that. Yeah.
Yes.
And also, like, are you using it to critique or comment upon it?
Right.
Is that, what is the purpose of it?
Exactly.
So 2 would be the nature of the copyrighted work. 3 is the amount and substantiality of the portion used in relation to the copyrighted work as a whole.
Of course.
So
How much did you need to accomplish what you've done? Yeah.
Right. Whereas the Kindest, like, it only used the letter. It didn't have the whole, the whole thing wasn't the letter.
Well, in 2016, it was approximately 50% of the letter. But by the time we get to court on this case, and we're talking about the third version, it's
but even it wasn't the whole short story. You know what I mean? Like, there was more to the short story. It used the letter, but still.
Yeah.
Okay. And then the effect of the use upon the potential market for or value of the copyrighted work. Okay. So these factors are all to be considered together, and then they go through and talk about every single
the balance
factor.
Of the evidence and what the case, the evidence that's in dispute, the evidence that's not in dispute.
And they basically say with the first prong, whether it, like, the question is whether it adds something new or with further purpose, whether it's transformative. The new work is transformative from the original work. And the court,
satirization.
Yeah, the court says that the law's on Larson's side here. And because
it's commentary.
It's commentary upon the letter. And the fact that it
Somebody,
actually,
side note, somebody should let our buddy Nate know this is satire.
yeah, I know. Right? Exactly.
Continue.
But yeah, they use the whole point that the story read in its entirety does not mirror the tone of Dorland's
Mhm.
letter,
Right.
and the story's tone to build on Dorland's thoughts, emotions, and feelings about altruistic kidney donation. In fact, it's like a commentary and a critique upon it,
Yes.
which goes to
Yes.
her benefit here in a legal moment. So
Absolutely.
interesting there. And they're saying, like, it's
Don't forget to
difficult.
be snarky.
Yeah, it's difficult to read it as anything other than a criticism of an altruistic
Yes.
donor's choice to reach out to a kidney recipient. So context is important.
Very much so.
And yeah, so that's basically, they find that it does not
That it is,
infringe.
in fact, a fair use.
Yeah. So I'm get yeah the finding fair use. Yeah, they find fair use. So I'm just trying to find the last little. In sum, there we go. Because three of the four factors, including the most important fourth factor, weigh in favor of the defense, the court finds that the at issue versions of the kindest are protected by fair use. Yes. Which is interesting.
So Dorland should have sued as soon as she read the first published version, rather than waiting and demanding that Larson rewrite or
Right.
substantially change the story.
Potentially, yes. But
And
you have to.
even then, Larson may have had a fair use defense.
Correct. Because she used it as political commentary. And yeah. So I find that that's interesting. It is funny. So Dorland argued that Larson's bad faith personal comments about Dorland in group chats with friends and other writers
Yeah.
foreclose her ability to use fair use as a defense.
She was
And
mean in private text messages, so she waived her right to use the defense.
yes. And because the Supreme Court and the First Circuit have expressed skepticism that bad faith has a lot of relevance to the fair use analysis.
Sure.
And what do they say?
Sure.
Copyright is not a privilege reserved for the well-behaved. That made me laugh. I just had to, that was the whole point of that. I had to share that because that was amusing.
The parties that Judge Kaczynski from the Ninth Circuit famously wrote years ago in a dispute over some music that Aqua's Barbie Girl was subject of a lawsuit that I think ended at the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals.
Mm-hmm.
And he wrote in his opinion, the parties are advised to chill. And that's all I can hear in my head now.
Judges can be so great.
The parties are advised to chill.
Yeah. The next thing that they talk about is the defamation claims and about credit, and they go back and forth. So they find that Dorland's statements accusing Larson of plagiarism as the 2016 and 2017 letters are not defamatory, which valid, and they shouldn't be because they were true. I mean, they were true. And she admitted that she took it, and, so those were not defamatory. And then they move on to the intentional interference with advantageous business relationships. And they go through the whole test for that. I mean, this is an opinion, my friends. And that is something actually to talk about briefly. When you are thinking about your moves with how to deal with a business situation.
Right.
You need to remember that you can be sued for interfering with someone else's ability to pursue future business in whatever industry that you're in. So you need to move cautiously in that regard. There are different, like I'm saying, obviously here there's a whole, elements that must be engaged in order for it to be found. But yeah, if you are preventing somebody from moving forward with their career because you're mad at them, that's that could end poorly for you. So,
Yes. Yes.
so basically, Larson failed to satisfy an element of her tortious interference claims, and so that was denied.
Dismissed.
Yeah, that was
Yeah.
dismissed. So I'll just go through the four pieces here to succeed, because I think this is important for people.
Yeah.
To succeed on a claim of tortious interference with business relationships, a plaintiff must show 1, a known advantageous relationship;
Okay.
2, deliberate interference;
Okay.
3, improper motive or means, which means that
Mhm.
you're doing it from a bad place. Okay. And then 4, resulting economic harm. And
Yeah.
that's where she failed there, because Larson
3 and
didn't.
4 would have been very difficult to prove here because the
Mhm.
woman's literally just lashing out over her own claim of plagiarism against Larson in the first place, which I think a lot of courts would find challenging to declare is a bad act on Dorland's part. And then, of course, there's really been no money at stake here this whole time.
That's the biggest thing. There's no resulting economic harm.
Right.
She was paid the
Mhm.
$300 as part of her contract, and there's no evidence that they pulled, the
Meanwhile,
story
the lawyers raking it in over this.
over this. Like, literally, I look at this stuff. I don't know. This is why I'm not practicing law anymore, because I look at this shit. If a client came to me, I'd be like, okay, and so what do you want to get out of this? Like, what
Yep.
amount of money could you possibly, what are your damages? That is where my
Yeah.
brain goes first every
Mhm.
time.
And can you explain to me specifically how you've been hurt? Like what
Right.
have you lost or
Exactly.
given up or had to pay as a result of this? Like what are
Yeah,
we asking the court to do for you here?
exactly. Where are your damages?
Yep.
And there are no monetary. And so then if there are no monetary damages, which there really
With the tortious interference claim
yeah,
anyway. Yeah.
right, which there
Yeah, yeah,
really
yeah.
haven't been, I'd be sitting down with my client and saying, okay, just so that we're clear, just so you know, I'm going to be racking up a lot of legal bills for you. This is
Yes.
not going to be cheap.
Yes. I charge you $500 an hour.
Yeah. We're
And you've got to
talking,
put 10 grand in my trust account for me to bill from starting today.
and this is probably going to cost you between $50 to $100,000. Easy.
Easily.
Easy.
Easily.
Potentially more.
If we go to trial,
Oh,
6 figures.
yeah. Easy. So the damages that you
Yeah.
are to potentially get
Yeah.
back from this
Yeah.
are not going to equal what you're going to pay to get a potential ruling in your favor.
So ask yourself,
Just
is
so
your
we're
ego
clear.
worth?
Yeah, just so we're clear here.
Uh-huh.
I mean, because that is the fact that
Yeah.
people have this much money to waste on things without damages.
A lot of them don't. They take out second mortgages or they max
I
out their
mean,
credit
they're
cards to
paying
finance
for
this
it.
litigation. Yeah.
What level of ire must you have within your body because
Mhm.
litigation is not for the weak-hearted, okay?
No. No.
Litigation is just dull and awful and rolls on, and you keep getting these legal bills and you don't really
Girl,
see anything happening.
I got an email 2 weeks ago from someone tangentially related to a case I worked on at a law firm I was employed by when I was still practicing eons ago. This case it's 8 years old. And I was copied on some correspondence related to it. Still active, still ongoing. I mean,
Wild. Wild.
they they can literally take a decade or more in some instances.
Yeah.
Like, and you're paying your lawyer the whole time that's going
The
on.
whole
They don't work
time.
for free.
This is like a massive car payment that you are
Yeah.
continuously paying
Yeah.
for your ego in this particular case. Is
In this
all
case, yeah.
is all legal is all litigation, there's some litigation that is absolutely necessary, in my opinion.
Absolutely. And there are some attorneys who will do litigation work on contingency, knowing that
Sure.
if they can get a jury verdict that awards you money, they'll just get paid from that at the end of the case.
These didn't,
That
though.
happens
There's
too.
no way
No.
that happened
No,
here.
no, no,
No
no,
way.
no. These kinds of disputes, the lawyers are getting paid up front because they know how long it's going to take and how petty it's going to be, and they want to guarantee that they're going to get paid for their work.
Exactly.
Period.
Exactly. And I'm not faulting the lawyers in this situation because clearly this is a client-driven thing. If the client no longer wants to be part of this, they just have to say, I no longer want to be a part of this, and
Yep.
you're out. But yeah, this was wild. So it's over now, and no one really won. I mean,
no one's really a plagiarist either, apparently.
No one's really a plagiarist, but she changed it so much that it was a commentary upon.
Like I said, if Dorland wanted to declare Larson a plagiarist, she should have sued way earlier than she did.
Absolutely. Based upon the 2016 thing. To be fair, she didn't know about it until 2018. But she shouldn't have contacted her first. She should have just sued. She should have just sued. If that was her end goal. And this is a very good example from one piece of advice I learned from a mentor in my legal field, and that we've talked about before, and I will reiterate again now. You can either have your goal or you can have your reaction. Dorland had her reaction.
Yep.
And she didn't get her goal.
Yep.
She had her reaction. She emailed everyone under the sun. She contacted the press. She went out there and shot her mouth off to anybody who would listen. She had her reaction.
She stirred up enough trouble that she opened a door for Larson to get away with what Larson did.
Correct. So she didn't get her goal. So think about that. Think about that next time you want to have your goal or reaction.
And also maybe just don't steal other people's stories.
Oh, for sure. What Larson did was not great.
Can we start there?
Larson's getting no points from me.
Listen, that little disclaimer that you put in the front matter of every book you publish isn't a joke. Like, that is legit.
That is real. Yeah.
And you should be trying to live by it as a creative person. If you're inspired by real events, do your best to change them substantially.
Substantially is
Make
key.
them your own.
Yes. Substantially is the key thing there.
Don't write about Travis and Taylor.
Yeah, don't do that. For the love of all things holy.
Don't steal somebody's Facebook post and literally copy half of it into your manuscript.
Don't do it. Poor decision.
Authors behaving badly, man.
Yeah. I mean, don't do so many things. There was an author this week that I think I sent you the video of, who was threatening people, or threatening a poor woman with, just heinous things, sexual assault and just awful.
Mm-hmm. Well,
and throwing out her name.
That's what blew my mind. She's like, this is my name and this is my Instagram and you can find me online, and also you deserve to be beaten or raped or whatever it was she said.
And I think she hit her car or something too. There was,
oh my God,
what?
It's another classic case of having your reaction rather than your result. Oof.
What are you doing, people? How is that going to help your career? Spoiler alert, it's not.
Well, there wasn't much of a career either. After a little bit of an investigation, it looks like this particular author hasn't published much in the last 4 or 5 years. No. And what she has published was not very well received.
Yeah, apparently she has 3 books out, and the reviews upon them before the
incident.
Bombing that has occurred since incident.
The legit reviews were not great either.
Yeah. So, her name is Lauren Wise. If you would like to Google her, you can Google this incident yourself and see the heinous things that she said and did.
So trigger warning, the incident involves differing political opinions related to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Yes. So if you're sensitive to that, maybe don't look it up. But also, if you're an open book on that, have at.
Yes. Thank you for that content warning for those who are. Yes. But yeah, just wild. The things people say with their whole chests in public.
The internet isn't forever.
Right? It's amazing. So, authors, take a deep breath. You can have your
Please.
goal, you can have your
Yes.
reaction. Remember
Like I
that.
tell my like I tell my kiddo, just take a minute, smell your cookie.
Smell your
That's
cookie.
what we do when we're having a tantrum. We smell our cookies. We take a minute, we smell our cookies. His always smells like chocolate. It's a great choice. I respect it.
Yeah, that is a good choice.
Yeah.
Yeah. I could go for some cookies
Deep breath.
myself.
I know. Oh my God, y'all. If you're still with us, first, thank you.
Yes, I know. This was probably not the
Sometimes
most.
the legal weeds are a little dry to wade through, and Heather and I,
We
just
get
because
into this because this is
it's what we
like,
used to do.
yeah.
It's the marriage of what we used to do and what we currently do. So it's like,
We were excited about talking about
yeah,
this. If
yeah. So if
you
you want more content like this,
please let us know. We'll make it happily. Yeah, we love this stuff. We
yeah, we do.
understand it might be dry for some others though. But if you were
Yes.
looking for an in-depth breakdown of what that whole thing was about,
Oh
you're
my, you're
welcome.
welcome.
You're welcome.
And also, if you've made it this far and you'd like your marketing tip for the week, boy, do I have one for you. Completely
Yes.
unrelated to everything.
Give it to
If
us.
you're still with us, don't lose sight of the importance of your tropes and farm them for every bit of marketing support you can get out of them, okay? And this is regardless of the genre you write in, but of course especially for our Romance Landia folks. Your tropes should be in your subtitle on Amazon and all of the retailers where you sell your books. Your tropes should be in your blurbs. You should have buzzwords that signal your tropes in your synopsis. You can use your tropes in your advertising, your pay-per-click ads. Like, put your tropes everywhere.
Everywhere.
Readers, we love readers. Some readers are so voracious and so busy selecting new books that they don't necessarily pay attention to all of the trimmings and trappings. So if you can just deliver them the tropes and it's the trope they're looking for, they're going to smash the buy button or the borrow button and you're going to make your money a lot faster. So
Yes.
farm those tropes for marketing support. And that is your marketing tip of the week.
Very good one. Thank you,
Thank
Veronica.
y'all.
And on that, we'll see you next week with another legal issue. No, I'm just kidding. I don't know what we're talking about yet, but we'll see you next week.